Make sure we are. All right, we're good.
All right,
Ready? You ready to do this?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what happens to be a rainy Tuesday for us Chicagoland people. To another version of Ask That. With me today, I have Jennifer Simon, and we are going to talk about recruiting. Jennifer, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We survived our snowstorm yesterday, so here in Minnesota.
Yeah, you're a little further north than I am.
Oh yes, it's been very cold.
So let's just dive in. Let's start with who you are. I'm just going to give a brief introduction of yourself and what you do.
Sure. My name is Jennifer Simon, and I work for a company called Talent Software Services. I've been in sales for over 25 years, and about 10 years ago, I realized that I was getting a lot of people jobs and not getting paid for it. So maybe I should go into recruiting and staffing. And that's actually how I found IT and the technology community. So in the last 10 years, I've really worked to build, people coming right out of college, helping them start their careers, really going mid-career, late career, really helping people get to know each other, connect, and then do better projects.
So this is going to be a fun conversation because I think that there are a few places that we can go with this. And I'm going to start with the inevitable. I get a daily LinkedIn request from a recruiter. It has become kind of the refrigerator noise of, like, please, will you at least read my bio? I know this is a common frustration kind of in the software community overall.
It is, yeah.
So let's start with, how do you kind of filter the noise from those who are just kind of carpet bombing LinkedIn to say, hey, I got a thing, versus those who are actually being legit? So we'll start there, and then let's just kind of dive into
That's a great place to start. And it's funny because it happens to everybody. It happens to me. It has happened to me. I worked for a small .NET company for a long time. That's how I really got deep into software development and understanding it. And people would ping me all the time on LinkedIn and ask me if I wanted to go do a JavaScript position in Bloomington. Now, if you've seen my LinkedIn, I clearly am not a developer.
Yeah.
So you're not alone, unfortunately. But there is a way to get around the noise, because you can tell. And I do this myself. I screen people out right now. I don't even know how many people I have who have requested LinkedIn to link in with me, but they do it blind. They don't send me a note. I have no idea why they want to contact me. Who knows where they are? I have no clue. So I generally just ignore them, because what are you going to do? Just add to the noise of your LinkedIn page?
Sure.
And to me, I'm kind of old school thought when it comes to LinkedIn. I really think that if you're going to link in with somebody, you should be able to figure out how you could potentially help them.
Sure, I agree.
And if I don't know you, I can't help you.
Yep.
So I really try to stick to that. So if you get somebody blind connecting, and it will happen, especially if you get in this recruiting industry, they tend to hire a lot of really young people, and then they sort of let them just go, and they don't really train them a lot. So A lot of times that will happen. What I would do is I would pick your favorite recruiters, maybe 2 or 3, not that many, and stay in actual touch with them. Go to coffee with them once every 6 months. Go to lunch every once in a while. When they want to, ask you about a new piece of technology, go share it with them, because they'll give you market data also. And then really those are the people you're going to build an actual relationship with. They're who you're going to think, okay, my project's coming to an end and I'm an independent contractor. I really want to find a job. I'm going to call Jen.
Okay. So how do you then... I, like others, have accepted people that I don't know. I've blindly reached out to people on LinkedIn trying to help or connect and do things. So how do you, if you haven't gone down this path, how do you find, like, the recruiter or set of recruiters that you should be interfacing with?
I would ask your friends.
It's easy enough.
Ask friends. ask your friends who they use and who they like. And then a lot of times going to meetups is a great idea. You can go to a .NET user group. You can go to a Java user group, JavaScript. I mean, here in the Twin Cities, you could go to a meetup every single night if you really wanted to.
Sure.
And so I would go to the meetups and get to know a couple people. You'll know right away if you're going to think they're not somebody you're going to want to talk to again. So you'll figure it out. But, a lot of times you can make a good connection with somebody, and then that's a really good way to do it.
Okay.
But yeah, just trying to dig through all that noise on LinkedIn, I think it would be tough. I would ask a friend or go to a meetup.
So then should you go through your LinkedIn profile and get rid of the folks that you don't know?
I personally don't, but that's probably because I'm too lazy.
Okay.
But
we all are.
It seems like an awful lot of work for, what am I really going to get out of it? Am I going to get a return on my time from doing that? Not really. So I kind of ignore it a lot, and I'll just, one thing that I'm kind of bummed about, and I hope they bring it back with the Microsoft sale, is they used to have notes on LinkedIn. And you could take a note. I would make a note whenever I met somebody. So if I met them at an event, I would know where I met them from. Okay. Because I go to so many events that I lose track. And
sure.
I have teenagers too. They suck my brain. So it just, so I just wouldn't worry about it, I guess.
Okay.
If somebody's really bothering you, then unfollow them.
Sure. So then, the next obvious question, because we've all gotten that kind of unsolicited spam or the unuseful spam, which is unfortunate for everybody in it, because those who are actually trying to be legitimate then become noise and vice versa.
Right. Exactly.
Unintentional noise. So there's a lot of things. We have LinkedIn, opportunity, remote. I guess I'll ask that. It seems like LinkedIn's having a bit of a resurgence in relevancy lately. Is it dead? Is it good? Should we equally invest in LinkedIn and remote and opportunity and the other plethora of wannabe, professional networking type sites?
Sure. I'll be a little biased. LinkedIn is the only thing I've ever early adopted to in my entire life.
Okay.
Because I just got it right away. I understood how it could connect me to a huge network that I'd had in my past and how it could connect me forward.
Okay.
And it still is used a lot. We use it here every single day. I would make sure your LinkedIn profiles are updated. Checking out some of the other sites isn't a terrible idea. Stack Overflow is a great place to go get a job. So,
sure.
You can definitely, think about some of the other places, but realistically, LinkedIn is a really great platform. But when I talk about social media, I talk about LinkedIn as that's really your professional profile. So that's who you are as a professional. If you go over to Twitter, then that's more a conversation.
Sure.
So you're going to have more of a conversation, get deeper. I follow tons of developers. Pretty sure I follow you on Twitter. And I just learned so much from it. It's awesome. But it's also for recruitment purposes. You could follow some of your favorite recruiters who kind of get Twitter, then that would reverse it again. But when you're thinking about social media, just think about what the platform is and what its purpose is.
Sure.
So, and especially as the new ones come out, because I can't even keep track of them. I think I get a new email every day about some new social platform that's going to take over LinkedIn, and I don't even click on them because I just don't have time.
So you mentioned keeping your profile or your kind of image on LinkedIn relevant. What are some strategies to really making sure you've represented yourself kind of correctly on LinkedIn?
Sure. So LinkedIn is a really great place for you to tell your story. So this is how you're going to really start your personal branding. So start with a picture of how you want to represent yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a suit and a tie or something like that. You don't have to have that done. If you're a developer and you like to go fishing, that's okay.
Sure.
But however, just make sure that picture represents you and how you want to put yourself out to the world. And then in the summary of LinkedIn, that's where you give yourself, it's time for you to brag about yourself in a third person. Jennifer did this, she did that, she's been accomplished at this, she's really passionate about that. So that way, use that summary for really telling your story. That's your cover letter.
Okay.
And then as far as the meat of the LinkedIn of your job positions, you can save a lot of that for a resume, but really going over what your position is. So somebody could understand what you were doing at that particular job.
Okay. So I'm going to ask then the next question. How relevant is the resume in today's world versus kind of what you've done in the world? Activity on GitHub and whatever, your user groups that you're part of, the conversations that you've had with folks, your own website. Where does the resume really fit into this?
Well, that's actually it's changing a little bit, and it's interesting because it depends on what you're looking for. So in our world, I do staffing and IT consulting. So we're working for short-term, long-term contracts, and really we do have to depend on resumes for that.
Okay.
But for instance, to land this job, I don't know that I even sent them a resume.
Sure.
I was recommended here by one of my friends who worked here, and then LinkedIn really told my story anyway. They'd already heard about me, so it kind of all just came together.
Sure.
But it definitely depends on the situation. And with the resume, again, this is something I'm seeing all the time, is that the resume also really needs to tell your story.
Okay.
So, and a lot of what I see, like for instance, I'm working on an Oracle database position right now. And when I was getting the resumes over, it was telling the story of a lot of numbers and worked on a lot of different versions of Oracle, but it said nothing about the person,
Yep.
like who the person is and what they do.
Sure.
And I really would encourage people to start using that summary section to sell yourself for the position.
Gotcha.
Because that's really, it's all about you telling your story, and especially if it comes over on paper, then it's got to be pretty clear.
How I can actually echo that. I mean, as we have been on our own company and whatnot, I found myself changing drastically my message to people. It's not like you walk up to a potential client or customer and say, "Here's my resume. I'd like a job or a gig or whatever." You find yourself saying,
Right.
"This is where I kind of fit and what I think that how I can help you kind of advance your revenue, your thing, your customer base, whatever it is." And this is how I best fit into that. So my messaging has certainly changed over time. And as somebody who's a business owner who has had people on payroll, I look for different things as well. Like, how are you going to fit into the culture? How easily are you to be trained? Where do you go to do your things and get the answers? And sometimes some of the technical stuff is almost secondary to the bigger picture at hand and how one understands that picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually something I'm seeing all the time now also, is when I go meet with hiring managers and they're talking about potential open positions or even open positions they have, the number one thing they talk about is communication and collaboration. They don't even care about the skill set. It's all, can they come in, assimilate with my team, and get along with everybody, because nobody wants to deal with drama.
Nope, nobody does. So a resume then, like, we all have lots of experience. I've been in the industry now almost 20 years. Like, where is a one-page resume a good thing? Is it a cover letter in a one-page? Is it like, where's the fine line of I'm trying to sell myself, but it's really about the phone call?
That's also it's a great question, and we actually go back and forth on it all the time on what's right for right now.
Sure.
One thing that I'm seeing is, especially somebody with 20 years of experience, let's say you're an Oracle guy with 20 years of experience, then that person could start to get ageism.
Ooh.
And it's not something I really thought of before until I actually had a client meeting about it. That something, at some point, does it matter what you worked on in 2007?
Right. Yep.
Right now, people want everybody on new technology. Are you using Node? Are you using React? What are you doing next?
Yep.
And they're not, so they don't really care if you were on C++ in 2007. And that's where I would recommend, and what I've been doing for a lot of my folks that are in that situation, I'll just pick a date for a long project, and then we'll just say you can get it upon a request.
Gotcha.
So unless it was really relevant for whatever position they're going in, but it's just so rare that happens. But a cover letter versus a resume that would be more for a full-time position. But cover letters aren't even really that important. I mean, it's honestly your email if you're sending it over to somebody.
Okay.
My best advice to getting in anywhere is always go through a friend. If you go into the applicant tracking systems, you generally end up in a black hole, especially if you want a full-time position. It's always better to get that internal reference. And that's, again, what LinkedIn is for. You can go out, find somebody at the company. Even if you're second connected, maybe you can get referred to them. So really use that referral source.
Sure. What if you want to get, so maybe you haven't had the on-the-job training for React or Node, but it's been something you've been doing on the side. How do you integrate that into your story and kind of mix that with your experience to be, is attractable a good word, but relevant, I guess.
So at the top of the resume, there's usually some bullet points of, just highlights that you want to bring out from technology. If you have something up on GitHub or Stack Overflow, or you're working on React on the side because your company is not using it, then I would put that in the bullet points right at the top.
Okay.
And not only does it show hiring managers that you're willing to learn on your own, which is huge for developers. Development managers absolutely love developers that just can't stop thinking about coding.
Sure.
So if you're going to go and learn Node and React on your own and you just haven't had the chance to use it yet, you definitely should highlight it, because not only did you go learn it, but you did it on your own.
Yeah. So I want to take it back to LinkedIn for a moment. How do we navigate LinkedIn? It's a big platform. It's been around for a long time. I think people often mistake it for just kind of a contact database, if you will. But how best, we talked about building your profile on there, but how do you best really take advantage of it?
So I personally think that LinkedIn is an organic growth situation. I think as you get to know more people, you go to more meetups, you meet more people, you link in, and then it becomes more natural. If you end up getting laid off and suddenly your job search has to kick into high gear, then I would recommend actually going to a LinkedIn training session on how to use it to find a job.
Interesting.
Because there are a lot of tactics and different things you can do, but as far as building your network, then I would do that organically.
What about the community side of the LinkedIn stuff? I mean, you can publish blog posts and I don't know if there are articles. How active should you be in that versus something like a Medium where you can write and publish as well?
I honestly think that depends on your goals and the audiences you're trying to reach. Medium goes more towards a techie crowd. LinkedIn would probably go more towards a business crowd, depending on your network.
Interesting.
But that's where if you're posting an article to Medium, I would definitely put it on LinkedIn. And that's one of those situations where if you're going to put an article out there, if I'm going to go promote something that I'm doing, I'm going to do it on Twitter and I'm going to do it on LinkedIn, and I'm going to make sure the message gets out there.
Is there a place where it starts to become unauthentic? If I'm taking my Medium stuff and just kind of dropping it on LinkedIn?
Well, if you wrote it yourself, it's pretty authentic.
No, I meant from the, you talked earlier about, making sure you leverage each of the platforms for their kind of native capabilities.
Sure. Yep.
If really we're talking about business owners or decision makers kind of on the LinkedIn paradigm, then me posting an article about, I don't know, MongoDB connections doesn't necessarily maybe it does. I don't know from the
No, that's actually a really good point. Then if it's something that targeted, I would stick with your target, Medium, or stick with whatever that target is for. There's one guy that actually is a manager over at CHS, and he does a great blog. He does it, I don't know if it's monthly or biweekly or whatever. I'm glad I follow him on LinkedIn though.
Okay.
So that's one thing that even more than me promoting my own stuff, I'll go and follow a number of different leaders that I think are really smart and they write interesting articles, and I'll make sure to go follow that so that it shows up in my content.
Okay. And now can you follow people without being connected through them?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yep, I believe you can just go to their profile, and then if you click one of the drop downs, you can say follow.
Sure. What so where does the role, since I spend a great deal of my time in community, where does the role of networking kind of in the community space? I mean, we talked about it a little bit of just kind of meeting other recruiters and whatnot, but how does community kind of wrap back into your professional side of things? I mean, is it something that's sought after by companies? Is it or is it just kind of the thing that, technical folks do on the side?
Well, here in the Twin Cities, at least, it has really become a thing.
Okay.
It's companies really look at what are you doing in the community? Are you volunteering? Are you doing what extra are you doing? I personally sit on the board of Women Leading in Technology and help plan 5 events in the year. So coming up in March, we're having one on mentoring, and that we'll have about 250 people there, mostly women. And I actually started going to that 6 years ago because I worked for a .NET company and I never saw women. So I knew we had to be somewhere in technology.
Yes, there are a lot of women in technology.
Exactly. But that's where something that I've seen from that group is pretty amazing, because the leaders that come, the vice presidents and the CIOs and directors, are there to network and help the younger people. So people right out of college or just a couple years out of college, they'll start coming, and you can see that network build. I even saw a few weeks ago, we had a happy hour, and one of my CTO friends, who actually was a male that I talked into going anyway, but he totally took somebody under his wing, was giving her advice on how she should network as a practitioner over a salesperson, and it was just really heartwarming to watch the whole thing happen.
Sure.
But companies are paying attention to it more and more. If you're getting involved in going and helping with the weekend code camps and things like that, that's going to definitely make you an attractive employee.
All right, so I have 2 questions that just spawned right off of that. One, are men invited to women in tech or a ladies like event?
Well, so what I say is if we don't all do it together, then there's really no point.
Yeah,
because
I would agree.
Ultimately, I'm trying to help women come up in technology, but we all have to work together.
Sure.
So what I tell the men that I invite to our events is that there's about 10% men, and odds are ever in your favor.
So with that being said, I think you had talked about the people coming and mentoring and doing things. Again, I've seen that there's this fine line of companies who get involved but are getting involved for their own motive, whether it be fulfilling a pipeline of engineers to legitimately wanting to help folks. Not that I know that sounds negative that people do it, but that's the reality is some companies get involved to just fill their pipelines rather than really going to show up on a Saturday and do my thing. If you find yourself in a position where you have that motive, then what?
You have the motive to do it?
No. I'm sorry. If you find yourself involved in a community, but then somebody else has a motive who's not really being altruistic about trying to help, they're just there to fill their pipeline.
Yeah, that is tricky. I as a lifetime salesperson, I definitely deal with feeling like I don't belong because I don't code. But
Sure.
At the same time, it is really hard to pick. You can see some of I look at the Twin Cities and I look at some of the companies where you're like, oh, they're kind of putting something out there just to put it out there.
Yeah.
But what I've seen more, honestly, is actually more encouragement with it. I mean, Thomson Reuters did a huge day just a few weeks ago, and SPS Commerce here in town just did a kids coding day on Saturday, and I've actually seen a lot more positive come out of it than really the companies thinking it's negative. But what I also have been noticing, it's the ones that are best at employment branding are the ones that are actually doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, we're sensitive to it. We do that conference to grow the community, to give exposure to kids, and it's interesting. We've told companies flat out they're not allowed to come because of their motive just kind of would shine through just in a conversation, not even with them, present. And so it's interesting. Like I said, we're hypersensitive to trying to cover the things to get the right people involved.
Yep. And that's the classic quote of, if you're networking, you shouldn't be selling. Your networking is to get to know each other.
Yeah.
If you're trying to sell somebody immediately when you're networking, it always ends up gross.
Yeah.
It never goes over well.
So I'm going to take this with one of the last questions then. Recruiting at an event. Like, there's always a stigmatism that, recruiters who are there, they're just, looking to get those CVs and get them through and staffed. And there's always, every company who supports a community, that there is some, motive, whether it's to help the community or brand recognition or recruitment, whatnot. How, you come to that conference, you got a booth or whatever. What's the best way for somebody who's there to kind of network with you and understand, but not feel like, oh, Jennifer's just trying to hire me, she doesn't really care?
That's going to depend on actually the recruiter, the person they talk to.
Sure.
If they're an authentic person, it should come through. If you go to that conference, I think about a lot of the different technology conferences I go here, the people who have the most traffic at their booths are the ones with the most fun prizes. They are. I've given away Millennium Falcons before. But that's where, that's really where it's up to the recruiters to have actual, true, authentic conversations. If you feel grossed out by a conversation at a conference, then I wouldn't follow up with that person.
Oh, there you go.
I would just move on to the next one, because I would imagine you have more than one sponsor.
Yeah, that's true. There's certainly, everybody has more than one option.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I kind of, in closing, I want to just thank you for what you do. We're here talking today as this. I was very excited to kind of hit that recruiting question of like, oh my God, it happens every day. I don't want it to be noise. And I think this is a perfect example of where things kind of all come together and we just genuinely help one another kind of lift the community. So thank you for, putting yourself out there and helping us and doing this. My last question to you then is, as the, I'll say the recruiter, what would be your kind of final piece of advice for anybody who's listening?
So, and again, it always stems from the person. If you're interested in getting into a company, you want to get into a Target of the world or wherever you are, then find somebody within that company that can be your champion. Okay. If you're looking for a full-time role and you have target companies that you're looking for, that's a great time to use it. If you're in transition and you really aren't sure what you want to do maybe next, then consulting is a good thing to try. So it just depends on that right position. A lot of companies are doing contract to hire and try before you buy now because they ultimately want to. Yep, and everybody wants to build a team. So be a good team player, be a good communicator, and make sure you're collaborative, especially on all of the agile teams, because that's how you're going to do the best.
What would be, I guess I have another question now. What would be a good way then to reach out to that individual to start getting LinkedIn? No pun intended, but what's a good way to kind of overcome that step?
One thing you can do if you don't know them or you haven't met them or you're getting connected, try to use a personal reference, a first connection. If it's your first connection and you're going to somebody that they know, they'll probably listen. I would just ask them to coffee, because ultimately what you want to find out is, we'll use Target as the example. If you want to find out what is Target really like, does the reputation precede itself? What happens? Then you're really going to get that from an inside person, and the recruiter is going to sell you on it. So you're going to really want to make sure that you talk to one of the team members, and then the team members can really help you get a job there.
Sure. All right. With that, Jennifer, thank you for the time today. It was awesome. I'll actually take my LinkedIn stuff a bit more serious, if you will. Maybe I won't ignore some of the refrigerator noise. Thank you again for everything. We will post your info below for people to get in contact if they so choose, and look forward to chatting in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.